Hey, welcome back. Sorry that video ended the way it did. I'm not sure why, but my phone just stopped recording. I know I've got plenty of memory, but that's what happened. Nonetheless, I wanted to continue. I still have a few more things I'd like to talk about. I watched my video. Sorry about the ums. That's something that has to be worked on. You don't notice it when you're doing it, but when you watch the video, you sure do notice it. I wanted to show a little bit more of the suspension. I just saw the video. You could see a little bit of the color on the coilover itself. I can show you the motors, the adjusting motors. The Tanabe Pro 7 with the T's this car is an active suspension. It's one of a kind. They still make, I believe they are still making active suspensions. I know that they have geared back quite a bit. They may not even offer any suspensions for the Evo 9s anymore. So what we got back here is the top of the rear coilover, and you're seeing the motor. I got a mess going on in here. I didn't really ever finish my speaker installation properly. Here are my little crossovers. Look at that. Is that great? Here's my other one. I get to hear that thing slapping around every once in a while. Still works great, but just I haven't gotten around to it. Maybe I can get one of my sons to help me out with that. I just got a new battery. The X Power. I like how it cranks, and I do like those brass terminal posts. This car vibrates violently. Compared to most cars, it's just a very tight car, and I think it broke the post off in my old red top battery. It caused me a lot of problems electrically. I really wasn't ever able to use my air conditioning. The voltage would drop quite a bit, and if the voltage isn't high enough on the Evolution air conditioning clutches, they're very sensitive. The gaps have to be perfect. It just won't pull in. Now that I have this, I've driven it around a little bit, and the air conditioning works great, just like it did when I first got it. This car came from down south. I had it shipped up to Connecticut, and it was uncomfortably cold when oh jeez, me and my finger on the lens. It was uncomfortably cold. You can see on the back here, I got a couple of really old Nakamichis. Can you see, read the Nakamichi? There we go. These were pretty nice speakers a very long time ago. They still sound pretty good. I put all this together basically with stuff I could find. This piece of board is what's left of a bunk bed that my kids had 20 years ago. These materials, these angles here, they're parts from the shop that I worked at doing machine repair. All the stuff here. And I was talking about that rear trunk brace in the last video. These are the mounting points here. Right here. And I used them. Basically what I did when I put this box in here at the time is I didn't want to mount it physically permanently into the car. So what I did was I wedged it in here. I have closed cell foam underneath the whole thing, and I put a bar up in the front, and the bar bolts it down, and it's pretty tight because it's pretty hard to get it in here. It sounds pretty good. I still have a pretty decent trunk. Back up and you can take a look at it. I still have a pretty decent trunk. I haven't finished my battery install yet either. I have a piece of Tough-Ak bulletproof plastic that I'm going to put over the top of the battery just to stop things from making contact. I got it inside. A few things to finish up, sort of. But things are functional fairly well as they are. All right. I'm going to open up the hood. I've been looking at the car a little bit outside a lot. Let me open up the hood, show a little bit of what I've done. Oh, and I know I said about the possibility of overvoltaging this when I jump started it. I also live near Tampa. We get more lightning here than anywhere in the world. You have to really be here to understand what that really means. In the case of the lightning here being as severe as it is, It's the scariest weather events. The hurricanes really are nothing compared to the lightning storms that hit in the summertime. We've been hit. We got hit here in the yard a few times. I actually got hit in the house with a set of earbuds in. My neighbor's car, this one right here, this one lost a bunch of electronics also. So it is possible, since this was sitting on jack stands in the rain, because while you're getting these crazy rainstorms, you got an inch of rain on the ground everywhere. It's raining so hard. So when the lightning strikes, it can conduct everywhere. It's kind of scary. You really don't want to be outside when that starts happening. There are chances that you're gonna get fried. So that's another possibility of why the ECU is damaged. All right, so here's my engine compartment. All right, my the worst painting job of all time. The magnesium cover. Look at that, terrible, sandblasted and everything. Oh, it would look so bad because it was old and it was fading and peeling off, and I wanted to at least clean it up, and that didn't work so well. It's hard to see in here. I gotta make sure I stay inside the shade area so that it'll still look at everything. I did put this grounding strap here to the coils, and that strap is round all the way directly to the main ground. I've seen on the JDM scene, they'll actually take a solid plate of copper that'll mount directly to the top of these, and that kit is insanely expensive. I mean, you're talking solid copper, which has value no matter what. It's really not necessary to have something as extreme as that. Maybe it's a little bit of a showy thing. So I still got my stock heat shields. I did this time recently just change my O2 sensor housing. Had one for years to replace, but didn't ever really have the need to change it. But since I've had my turbo rebuilt, this is a Turbo Lab TD0620G billet compressor wheel. I figured that was an excellent opportunity to put it on. And I was still able to actually use all of the heat shielding, which I really, really am happy for. I was told at Turbo Lab that it is a very bad idea to wrap turbos in insulation. They do use heat. It is really what makes a turbo work, is the heat. The more of the exhaust heat that you can get into it, the more power you will get out of it. But what happens after you shut the turbo off is the turbo is no longer able to allow heat to escape. It will not sink heat anymore. Cast iron is a fantastic heat sink. It takes heat and gives up heat better than any material over, thousands of cycles, hundreds of thousands of cycles. It's an amazing material. Never wrapped it. I think the heat shield is enough. I do have the downpipe wrapped. I do recommend that. It gets really close to a lot of sensitive parts of the car. Wrapped it. I don't know if I can actually get down there to see it. We're going to give it a shot. I have to look at the camera because it's hard for me to get under there and see if we can actually see. Oh, we can see my lower pipe. There she is, right there. I wrapped it with duct tape, the silver foil tape. Now, the reason why I did that was that I know on the outside of that, it is so cool that you can just sit there with your hand on it while the car is running and it doesn't even feel hot. And that tape is meant for pretty hot circumstances, so to speak. I've used it in certain applications and it can handle temperatures probably over or near 150 degrees. And it's actually been staying on there quite nice. It's really, the idea is just to keep things from actually touching the insulator itself. It's delicate. As you're driving like this, it tends to get torn. And I just wanted to see how well this would work. I didn't really have a lot of the wrap. I had just enough to do the sensitive parts of the pipe. And so this is a good test of whether to see that that's working or not. Alright, let's get back up here. I do have short route intercooler piping, if you didn't notice that. It's right up here. I got this quite a while ago from a company that is, I believe, no longer around, called the Nisei Engineering from California. They custom built those pipes and a 3.8-inch intercooler with cast ends. This is a tank of an intercooler. I think it weighed over 40 pounds, and I think the original one was about 27 or 26. But it's amazing. There is just about no pressure drop across this. It was supposed to be good to about 1,000 horsepower, which means for me, if you're running anything way under that, you have an excellent performing intercooler, especially down in conditions like Florida, hot and humid. So you have one more mod, I believe, that is going to be a big help on cooling. And I've heard that when you change the original radiator to an aluminum style radiator, they actually allow air to flow a little better through the radiator itself. And it doesn't sound like a bad idea. I'd like to do that. And here's my intake. I don't know if anybody knows of this, Group M. Group M was K&N Japan. I don't know a whole lot about this. I did speak a little bit with the U.S. sales rep on this system. I paid $1,500 for this. And what he told me was the head of Group M, K&N Japan, he was a big time engineer, and he was really meticulous about things, maybe a little bit anal. And what they did to develop this and what they do to develop their intakes, if you're a Porsche owner, you might know Group M because they're more into more exotic or really more performance-oriented vehicles in general. Not very many cars like this would ever have a system. You know, this is probably one of their cheapest intakes. I think the Porsche ones were about $8,000 for the system. So what he told me was they actually take and they build the whole front end of a car in an airflow tunnel. So they've got it in the car in the airflow tunnel, and they designed this intake specifically to run perfectly with this front end and all the parts and the way this front end is built and how it grabs and directs air. And they call it a ram air system. Now, I've never seen anything like this, because a ram air system is typically just a big giant hole. Now, the problem with just having a big giant hole is, versus what you see here, is this allows so much airflow that comes through this hood. So much. Because this is, when you look here, let's see, all around it, there is space around it. It's a good insulating intake to keep the heat of the engine compartment away from this space here, but there is room for air to go through so that there can always be airflow here. Even if you're not pulling tons and tons of airflow, because of this design, you have a lot of airflow here. This does feel like it wakes up quite a bit once you start getting up at high speeds and high RPM. What I always loved about this car, after I tuned it